Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Boutique Hotel News webinar. And today we're going to be talking about modern slavery and what boutique hoteliers need to know. If you're joining this webinar for the first time, my name's Eloise Hanson and I'm your host for today. My role at Boutique Hotel News is editor, and we are a global trade publication that covers the boutique, lifestyle and luxury hotel industry. We have a supporting partner today, which is the Institute of Hospitality. It's a UK charity which promotes high standards in hospitality education and training, offering accreditation and support to its 16,000 members. The charity is currently applying for chartered status and is seeking support for its application. And I'm sure that any letters of endorsement would be warmly welcomed, and you can send those to CEO Robert Richardson, whose details have been popped into the chat there. A brief overview of how today's webinar is going to run. We'll spend around 45 minutes in discussion with our panelists today, followed by some time to take any questions. So if you do have any burning questions, please submit these using the Q&A function, and I will get round to asking those as and when relevant. And as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, and every registrant will receive a copy of that recording within 2 days' time. So let's meet our panelists today, and I will invite each to introduce themselves individually, and I'll move from left to right as per your PowerPoint screen. So Vandana, let's kick off with yourself. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me here. My name is Vandana. I'm the Managing Director and a Senior Solicitor at Davenport Solicitors. And we help businesses with human resources, employment law and immigration law. So this topic is very relevant in relation to employees. So looking forward to it.
Thank you. And over to you, Meenal.
Thank you, Eloise. Thanks for having me. I'm Meenal Sachdev. I'm a local councillor for Hertfordshire Borough Council for the last 9 years, but I'm also director of Shiva Foundation. And we have worked over the last 11 years on creating models and blueprints to tackle human trafficking and modern slavery, both within local councils, but also within hospitality and specifically hotels.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And last but not least, Basel.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Basel Jabri. I'm the head of human resource at Canopy by Hilton. It's a 340 hotel, 4 restaurants. And I think today I will share my experience with also with the topic from the guest and the employee perspective as well.
Thanks all, and I'd encourage everybody that is listening to this conversation. The LinkedIn profiles of our panelists have been popped into the chat. If you would like to learn more after this conversation has ended, please do connect directly, as there is lots to dissect in today's conversation. But before we jump right in, I always like to flag some context. This helps to set the scene ahead of our conversation today. And these are some headlines that we've either published on Boutique Hotel News or other media sources. And I believe the back end of last year, 11 staff members who worked through third-party recruitment agencies were arrested for illegal employment at a central London hotel. These 11 staff members didn't have the right to work in the UK. They were working 15-hour days and were paid half the normal salary. Other headlines from media sources, The New Yorker, I believe this time last year, ran a feature which examined franchised hotels in the UK and whether hotel chains should be held liable for human trafficking. And to really pull this into perspective, an article from The Telegraph, I believe earlier this year, shared the headline that 50 million people are trapped in modern slavery. And it sort of examined how these people have been unfortunately exploited. On the next slide, The top headline reads, "Hotel firms urged to not lose sight of the important role in curbing human trafficking." It is a very, very important topic, which is why we're here today. And to bring the conversation up to a somewhat present day situation, the House of Lords Select Committee is reviewing the Modern Slavery Act 2015 and has this year launched a call for evidence regarding its effectiveness and whether improvements should be made. So I hope that gives some food for thought regarding today's conversation. Let's get stuck right in. And I'd like to kick off with a question to Vandana, if I may. Would you mind, please, just providing us with a reminder and an overview of what the Modern Slavery Act currently details?
Yes, so the Modern Slavery Act 2015, as you mentioned earlier, is legislation that outlines that how businesses must address and report slavery and human trafficking. The Act requires certain companies to publicly present modern slavery and human trafficking statement, as well as other legal obligations. So a commercial organisation has to publish a slavery and human trafficking statement if it's a corporate body or a partnership, if its turnover is at least 36 million or over, if it supplies goods or services, and if it operates in the UK wholly or partly. Just in a nutshell.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to follow up with a question to Meenal, if I may. I highlighted that there might be some changes within the legislation that could come into force. Could you perhaps highlight if there will be, or what changes we can expect this year? And Vandana, you're welcome to contribute to this should you wish. But Meenal, let's kick off with yourself.
Thank you. So I think it's going to be an interesting year ahead. As you said, that the Modern Slavery Act is under review, and hopefully we'll hear something from them soon. I think that the catalyst for change, so apart from a lot of the immigration laws that have been, regulations, legislation that have been passed ever since 2022, including the Nationality and Borders Act, a lot of these things have unfortunately, it's curbed immigration, but it's negatively impacted victims of modern slavery. And I think that to sort of understand what's happened there and also curb the sort of negative impacts of that, I think some of the positive things that we're going to find this year is on the back of what's happened in the CSDDD, which is the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, which was agreed in the EU on March the 4th. And this legislation bans the products being imported. Any products that have been imported that might be using forced labor are going to be banned in the EU. So I think that this will really affect all businesses, SMEs as well, and including having a vast impact on the hospitality sector globally. So I think that's going to be very positive for tackling slavery within the hospitality sector. Also, several months ago, there was a new anti-slavery commissioner who was appointed in the UK, Eleanor Lyons, and she has been very strategic since she's been there and has been talking about new parliamentary processes and talking about the fact that she's going to be reviewing all new legislation that will impact modern slavery going forward. And she's publicly stated that she'll ensure that we do not conflate modern slavery and illegal immigration going forward as well. So I think these two things, the EU legislation as well as the Anti-Slavery Commission's appointment, will hopefully get us back on track when it comes to modern slavery and tackling it in the UK.
Vandana, is there anything that you would like to add to this? And you know, especially around any changes that we might expect, if not this year, then maybe 2025, once laws have been reviewed.
So I think that in terms of what we can look forward to, is that there's likely to be greater enforcement. So there will be there will be more power to impose civil penalties against the perpetrators, and for not publishing a modern slavery statement if that is required. Well, in terms of boutique hoteliers, I think where this is relevant is where, in terms of specific reporting, which is compulsory for large businesses, because boutique hoteliers may fall under the supply chain, they will be subject to some sort of more scrutiny, and obviously they may face much more questions around that, their involvement. And then there's also going to be a mandatory publication of the statement to the government's online registry as well, which I'll probably add.
Mm-hmm. Meenal, as someone who's very close to the subject and clearly very passionate about it, do these changes that knock-on effect of legislative changes, when might those start to manifest? When do you think we will start to see this come into force?
Well, to Vandana's point, I think that the supply chain side, the modern slavery statements, that is all, that's already beginning, and I think we'll see a lot more guidance around that and legislation around that, hopefully on the back of the review that they're doing. So I would hope towards by the end of the year we might be seeing more concrete these sort of changes happening, but it's imminent, especially as I said, on the back of what we've seen in the EU.
Mm-hmm. And Vandana, I would like to come back to yourself and talk about steps to ensure compliance. If some changes are already starting to take shape and we're expecting more or concrete changes to come into effect at the end of this year, what steps can boutique hoteliers especially do now or take now in order to prepare for this and make sure that they're ready?
So I think the risk for modern slavery can exist at any level in an organisation's supply chain, I should say, extended into high-risk countries as well as sectors, and so that includes hospitality and manufacturing. So it's something that smaller businesses really just can't withdraw themselves away from completely. So smaller organisations at this point in time don't actually have to publish a statement, but there is this transparency in supply chains guidance, which suggests that smaller organisations may want to publish a statement, and it will be helpful for them if they did actually publish that statement, if they're responding to customer due diligence queries, which might ask if they have a statement or policy setting out their approach to modern slavery within the business and the supply chain. Also, where it comes to bidding for contracts against larger organisations, they may find it useful and to have that modern slavery statement and set out what their stance is on it. So I think in terms of I can see it changing for them is that they may need to take a step back to think that actually they are themselves going to be required to explain themselves if they want to continue to bid for under procurement, work with larger organisations, because the obligation is on the larger organisations, the questions will filter down to them at some point.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Basil, let's bring you here, sort of property level perspective, which I think is always important to share. Can you please share some examples of the preventative measures that the hotel has taken in order to mitigate against any risks?
Absolutely, thank you. Actually, modern slavery is not a new topic. It's existing. I mean, the law to enforce anti-modern slavery is long time, from 2006 on before. Luckily, I think the Hilton group already on top of that, other hotels as well. The big groups are already have policy in place. and it's compliance. We have online training. It's is an annual mandatory training to go through all of this process. So is the topic itself is not strange to the people in hospitality sector. The measure we take from all the way from basic to very advanced. The basic one will be absolutely the training, the mandatory training to all the employees, especially front of house, especially your receptions, your concierge, restaurant host. So all the frontliner who are witnessing, interacting with the guest must go through the training. And then, of course, you have the employment anti-slavery side where it goes under the human resources. So our HR team also have to go through training to understand the labor law, understand the visa. Now we have sponsorship in the UK. There is a lot of advice we can give how to also control that the best way possible. Example of a very good practice I can share is to unite with your local police, where they can come and just audit your hotel time to time. We had a couple of this in our hotel, and touch wood, thanks God that we passed twice already, and they were very convincing. The police department will bring a real actors to your receptions, real cases, and they will see what you respond, and then they will audit and they will send you a report if you are compliant or not. If you don't, sometimes they also can warn you. They will send you an official warning, so you can contact with your local police, police stations, see if you can have a cooperation with them. They will do also free training. If you cannot afford, if small business cannot afford, there is a lot of free training online available for small business. From our side, we have annual models. We do it twice. So every new employee have to do it once, and then our front office team have to do it 2 times. Human resource is mandatory every year as well to do the training. I hope I answer your question.
Yes, no, absolutely. I think it's, like I said, I think it's important to share these concrete examples of what is actually happening at property level. At the end of the day, we're here to learn. You know, there are hotel owners, operators, groups that have signed up to listen to this webinar, keen to hear these insights. Something that I having read quite a lot of articles about this online is looking at the common signs that hoteliers should be aware of, and that's both amongst guests but also their staff members. Basel, could you elaborate on that and maybe share some of those common signs?
Sure. So we always tell our employee to look for such signs. The sign can be also sometimes it's not very complicated. It's very, very easy. Sometimes just try not to stereotype to start with, but also see it, say something about it. So we just also like there is no embarrassment here. Don't feel embarrassed. Should I tell my duty manager? Should I tell my manager? If you feel there is a situation which you are not comfortable in, or you see something not comfortable, report it. Also, it's very sensitive as well. I have to say that in our business as well, these things happening. And it's very, I mean, what is the things is happening? Party, joy, alcohol. So sometimes is so we have to be very careful also how to approach the guest. That's why training is very, very important. But the signs to start with. So first, make sure you don't embarrass your team or your guest unless you report it. You see, unless you are certain. You are allowed to ask questions to the guest. The guest will feel more secure when you ask such questions. And we had a lot of scenario when the guest thanks the front desk agent for checking. Signs such as the age difference between the couple sometime. Yeah, doesn't matter with the gender. We never look at the situation which only when is a little girl with a male or a female. We look at it as very, very neutral. So it can be sometime as a little boy with older lady as well. we ask them to look at the signs, ask for IDs. We are allowed, we empower them to ask for IDs, passport, relationship, have a conversation with the little one. Signs such, again, without stereotyping, over makeup sometime for a little one when she's very clear she's 14, 16, or he, and he's somehow, there is any grooming sign, and there is a lot of them. You have to look at that in deep to look, is that a normal? Does they really know each other? Is there any sign of worrying? So sometimes the victim is a little bit not comfortable or worry, although they train them very, very well, unfortunately, to be natural. Sometime last minute check-in as well, so that will add to the couple, so there is no prior booking happening just in the last 24 hour or 6 hour. So we give extra attention to that, even with normal couple over here, because we also have a war against prostitution. So it's not only the modern slavery here. We are looking at the very big picture over here. We are anti-slavery, yes, but also anti-prostitutions. So we don't allow this kind of behaviors around the hotel. Funny scenario, sometime an extra key request where only single use for the room. That triggers something, so we just watch them. We don't make our guests feel uncomfortable. I'm sure there is at 99% there is a good reason why, but this is one of the sign as well. Why will you need usually because when they go out they will give the key, they come back, so the other person can enter. So we just put a note to check who is going to room 202 more often, you know, if it's a single one. So we train our security to have a look at that. And the restaurant is more or less is the same. Is in the bar, who is drinking, who is not, who is underage, asking for the age, very important. Comfortable or not. Is there a sign to for ask for help? So this is very important. So sometimes the victim will send some signs, but that will mostly be in the third world countries, not in the UK. Unfortunately, in the UK is a professional business sometime, so you can't really trigger it that easy. But we do our best. So yes, late, as I said, last minute check-in, the extra keys. I talked to my front office manager today, and he adds cash payments. Sometime it's one of the trigger. Who is coming? They come to check in. They want to pay by cash. Someone will pay by cash this days. It's okay, still okay. But sometimes the reason is they want to have no online track at all. So no credit card, no data, so nothing to help us basically track them after. Also, he was talking about there is a training for fake IDs sometimes. So sometimes you also trigger that from that. So that's why the government insists in bar and restaurant for IDs and the age, and no ID is a no-no. I don't advise any hospitality, bar, lounge to take the risk on allowing someone who you suspect without ID to come, because it is the end of the repetition of this venue. Yeah, I mean, if you want, I can continue what we do also in human resource in terms of employment. But I think my colleagues also can give more advice about that.
Yeah, we'll move on to employment a bit later on, because I want to talk about visa applications, sponsorships, and you know how hoteliers can sort of navigate that area. So hold that thought, Basel. I'll bring you in.
Yeah,
I
mean, the police ones is the latest one. It's happening twice in our area. We are so glad they are looking after us, local police. So if they hear me here, thank you very much. They actually one time make my receptionist cry, because they were so into why, and then they reward her. But then she was like, God, is that all an act? They say yes, because she was so emotional, try to stop the check-in and look at the little girl. So we pass, but sometimes, I mean, that is a really very good practice.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. Actually, that's a really good piece of actionable insight that hopefully some of our audience members can actually take away today. To build on top of this, to look at additional resources that hoteliers can leverage to help. Meenal, can you share more about the Shiva Foundation and what tools, platforms, PDFs, whatever it is that you might offer that can help hoteliers to help identify potential risks?
Sure. So we set up when we started initially. We had several Hilton hotels actually, so they were great partners to work with to create a tool. So for 2 years, we spent designing a stop slavery blueprint, and then we stress tested it within our hotel group across 7 hotels at the time. And then we launched that at the UN headquarters in New York. But this Stop Slavery Blueprint is specifically for hotels. It can be adapted across hospitality, but specifically for hotels. And it's been created as guidance with recommended action and templates to set up strong processes and protocols to address the risks and identify the risks. So with everything from front desk to supply chains, both products and labor. And this blueprint within it contains individual manuals then for managers, department heads, teams, just to sort of suit the nuances within the organization, because everyone would look at it through a different lens depending on where they're sitting within the business and operating model. So it's been adapted. So it's not just like this one look of information. So that's our core toolkit to be used in hotels. On the back of that, then a few years ago, for SMEs specifically within hospitality, we created a separate toolkit because, again, their operations are that much smaller, but also complex. And so we sort of adapted the first toolkit for SMEs, and that's being now promoted for just smaller businesses across the country. So those are the sort of 2 areas that we've looked at. Then obviously other areas which are to do with government, but this is to do with hospitality.
And how can audience members access those toolkits?
So they're all on our website online. They're free resources. We're actually updating the blueprint as we speak, and that should be ready by the end of this month. But also our team can then be contacted if you want us to come and explain these toolkits and carry out training to make sure that we can embed it within your specific business as well. So that's all a free resource that you can use and businesses can use.
Thank you. If you may, I want to sort of drill down on the supply chain aspect of this conversation. I know hoteliers, it's even looking at it from an ESG perspective, and just slight tangent here, but trying to track carbon emissions, for example, in one supply chain is a bit of a headache and a huge challenge for hoteliers. I imagine that trying to track or keep tabs on any potential signs of modern slavery in one supply chain is also very challenging. Staying with you, Meenal, are there specific areas of the hospitality supply chain specifically that do pose a higher risk? And if so, how can hotels make sure that they are practicing the right due diligence in those areas?
Yeah, so I think the entire model poses risks in different ways. Specifically, if you look at supply chains, you're looking at the labor element of it, which is getting more and more complex with the migrant issue. There's the labor element of it, and then there's the product element. The product further removed, but equally as exploitative. So, and depending on understanding those 2 areas is really important before you even start the due diligence process. So understanding the risk areas within those 2 supply chains is really important. So yeah, high risk industry, complex operating models. I would say that if I was to just go into workforce and labor exploitation, because that's something that we've really focused on, look, there's areas that we should be looking at are forced labor, where there's sort of third-party recruitment agencies cleaning agencies, many different types of third-party agencies, cleaning agencies, places where you're outsourcing labor, looking at wages within, looking at wage settings within partner agencies, suppliers. Then there's the sort of child slavery part of it, which again, I think may be more applicable to other countries, but there's also that to look at. There's a sexual exploitation element. There's forced criminality, where hotel rooms can be used for stopovers, meetings for county lines. Bars and nighttime venues can be used for forced criminality as well. There's domestic servitude incidences that have happened where guests of hotel may bring their domestic workers from abroad. And then there's simple and plain human trafficking, where exploitation can happen in hotel rooms and can be used as temporary accommodation as people are being transferred from place to place. I think the key, sort of sum it up, the key for both the labor and product, in order to have robust mechanisms to address these areas, is really working closely with your partners and agencies and starting those very important conversations, which always start with questions. When we did this back in, oh gosh, like a really long time ago, there was a real fear around how we can even start these conversations. What are the questions we should be asking without people being insulted? And this is a very different time, but 10 years ago, people did not want to hear about this, or they were very much like, what are you accusing us of? And these relationships that we'd had for like 20 plus years. So we actually, within the blueprint, have a whole area of like how you start these conversations. But now everybody's on the journey. Now everybody has to be on this journey. So it's a very different time. But I think understanding where people are on their journey, it doesn't mean, if someone's not even looking at it, doesn't mean you stop working with them. It means you can actually build together and create something, which we've done over and over again with different suppliers. So I think that the key to creating very robust mechanisms and doing your due diligence within hotels is to build those very effective and efficient relationships with your multiple partners across the business, and making sure that you're working together to root this issue out, to mitigate this issue across your supply chains. And you can't do that as one business. You have to do that as a multi-layered, a multi-pronged approach.
Thanks, Meenal. Thank you. Vandana, I would like to hear your insights on this, and to follow up on the labour topic. I mentioned earlier a story where 11 workers that were recruited through third-party agencies did not have the right to work in the UK. How can hoteliers navigate the complexities of such things as visa applications, sponsorship for skilled foreign workers that they want to recruit? Hotels still have a challenge around staffing and talent. There's probably a greater reliance now on these third-party recruitment agencies and staffing companies. So could you shed some advice as to how to go about this?
Yeah, I think it starts from right at the beginning to making sure that your HR systems are in order. So simple things like employment contracts, policies, they're all in place, and also having a system, an HR system where you can monitor and store your employees' data on it. When visa expiry dates are coming to an end, having that kind of system in place. And then also asking agency questions which could potentially, alert the organisation to possible exploitation, and keeping your eyes open in relation to whether or not, service providers are charging you way less than what the going market rate is, because that again could be questioned as to what are they paying their employees if they're only charging you a very nominal sum for the service they're providing. I think again, employers need to start off with doing right to work checks, and a lot of organizations probably don't do it because they don't understand how important it is, but it's become much more simpler. The Home Office do have an online system where you can actually put in the details, relevant details, and find out whether or not somebody has the right to work in the UK, and obviously prevent illegal working. Like you mentioned, obviously I've seen information about And it's quite often the case that some employers will ask whether the employee will pay for the whole of the application for the sponsor license or their visa applications, and then in return have their salaries deducted, or not paid for a certain period of time. That's not allowed. So yes, the employer can voluntarily offer to pay, the visa fees for the worker, and they can also have a clause which says, okay, we can recoup the fees, but on a scaling system, rather than saying, okay, well, you work and we won't pay you for 2-3 months. I mean, then how are they going to survive? Employers also need to go a step ahead and also check whether or not, and this is one thing that it could potentially happen with migrant workers, is where they live. So if employers get alerted to a same address for a number of employees, that the question should arise: well, is that shared occupancy, and why they're living in shared occupancy? So those kind of questions need to be prompted to really get to the crux of the matter. In terms of the sponsor license and the application fee, again, a lot of employers would say, okay, well, we'll pay for everything, but the fees are increasing. I mean, we've just had new changes on the 4th of April. Fees have increased, and this makes it more difficult for employers to recruit from overseas, which makes it even more tempting to say, oh, by the way, if you want to work, what can you pay? And so they need to be mindful of what they can ask the employees to pay for and what they can't ask the employee to pay for.
Thank you. I'd like to bring Basel back into the conversation here. I'm aware that Canopy is a softer brand within Hilton, but I want to sort of use your expertise and drill this down into boutique hotels, which typically do have perhaps smaller HR teams. So with that in mind, how can boutique hoteliers effectively vet potential employees and mitigate that risk of modern slavery? What advice do you have, Basel?
Well, I think the first advice, first of all, Vandana said all the very important things. Thank you, Vandana. Exactly. I mean, the right to work is very important to be checked, especially in the UK. We are lucky in the UK because there is a very advanced immigration system. Anyway, it's very difficult for people to break it anyway, especially if they want a proper contract. So for smaller hotels, I think they have to check the 0 hour, or people who coming to ask for specific hours to work only. So if your hotel is providing 40 and the part-time is 30, and someone telling you, I can do only 10, only 15. And now if you can accommodate is one thing, but this is the case, we will look at it. Why only that amount of hours? It will trigger something in between. Because this is where maybe the black market, so he will do officially 15 hours with you, another 20 unofficial hours with someone else, and you don't want to be also cooperating with such things in general. I think the biggest advice I can give boutique hotels also that audit, it's worth the money. Audit is worth the money. Don't save when it's coming to audit on your right to work, on your data protections. There is no need to save on that. This is where you spend money and make sure you are compliant. One, because you are serving a cause. You don't want your business reputation to be affected for such things. You show us this news and is available online. It will be available online forever. This hotel will be damaged or under the, what we can say, in the gray area for some long time to prove innocent in the future. So it's not worth it. I will advise them to have a check ID. It's very cheap. It's £1 per check. I mean, if you're hiring 100 people a year, that is £100. The check ID will take the responsibility from you. They will do exactly what the manager do to check any right to work, but they will give a certificate that this person is actually have the right document to live, and to work in the UK. So that is cheap, and we have it. We secure that with a very good company. We link it to the onboarding software. If the company or the boutique hotel cannot afford an onboarding system, then you have to have an extra careful with your HR advisor or the person who is looking after the hiring process to do the right to obtain the home office check IDs properly. So the home office is providing also the service. All what you need to do is ask the share code from the candidate and apply it on the system. Make sure you do it for every single one, because I witness sometimes managers escape other manager when they're hiring, because of course he have. No, not always. So all your employee must go through the same standard. Vandana mentioned about the expiry. That is very important, because that's also means sometime your work permit is also expired. It's not only the passport. So if you have any kind of notification from your system, or you notice like someone passport ID right to work is expiring, you need to start the reminder 2 months in advance. This is our best practice, because in 60 days they have enough time. They have no excuse to say, oh, I didn't hear from the home office, or I didn't do that or that. We remind them from 2 months in advance. We tell the employee without hurting them that this is a requirement. We do this to your safety. The last one is about the sponsorship. Yes, it's getting more sensitive. It's getting more difficult. I agree with Vandana. So that's mean, actually, I didn't look at it until Vandana put it this way. And that's mean it will be more opportunity now for the black market to play with it, because people will be more desperate to convince companies to do so. So my advice is tied up with a professional, because we are talking about boutique hotel here. You cannot afford to have 5-6 people on your HR payroll. So here I advise you to have a proper company to look after the A to Z to sponsorship. So an example, we have a very good company who we hire them to, if I need to hire abroad, they will take care. They will make all they will notify, they are lawyers as well. So they will notify us if there's anything fishy with any of the applicants. The last advice, we break the third party. We break that out. So if I want a chef from anywhere in the world, I post it on my website. I choose the CV, and then I tell my partner who's doing for me the sponsorship to basically run this application. That means I choose. That means I didn't need an agency to go to poor villages and take people, ask them to pay. I don't know. I worked in Dubai before, and I had scenarios where we discover in our office very sad scenarios where they were tight. They were tight for a year, 50% of their income for a year. When we find out, and they are very professionals. They cannot go out of them. It's not something like they can stop paying them. They have their family back home. They are well organized. When we are talking about the corruption in this demand. So hire professional people to help you out. Is worth the money. Make your internal audits as well. The check ID is very important. I think this is the top 3.
Louise, I just add on to that as well, because we talked about the Modern Slavery Act and what it means for the larger organisations. But what I would like to add is that, in terms of sponsor license, these are sponsor license applications can be made by any organisation in the UK. But if you are found to be employing illegal migrant workers, then not only can you lose your sponsor license, but you can obviously be heavily fined. And I think it's about £45,000 per legal worker for the first offence, and £60,000 per worker for repeated offences. So that's quite a hefty amount.
Thanks for flagging that one. I would like to ask Basel as well, as the on-property perspective here. In cases where there is suspected modern slavery, how does one go about raising that issue and dealing with it in the most sensitive and respectful and in some cases, maybe urgent ways?
Yeah, in my previous work, my coordinator did report a case where she suspect that the person doesn't look like the person in the passport. The end result, it was correct. She told us, yes, it's not me. And it was so, and that is the UK, and this is 2 years ago only. I'm not saying something happening before the technology or whatever. She managed to come to the country with a passport. It's not her passport. I mean, then I think this is a woman power. My coordinator said, no, she's not the one in the passport. And this is where you don't stereotype, because for us, sometimes some race look the same, they don't. You don't have to ask questions and be very careful. So what we did, we had a meeting with the candidate immediately. We told her so. We told her what the law have to compensate us. I mean, sorry, force us to. We have to report it. We told her what the theme. We give her a charity organization to support her case. Apply. Also, we are not an immigration consultancy, but we show her online how she can apply for many kind of protection system. First, we direct her to protect her stay in the UK if she can. Then she's welcome to come back. Then since then we apply always ID during interviews. So we very nicely and professionally state in the email, or when we invite anybody to the interview, like, please carry your right to work evidence with you. Could be anything, but whatever. We want to see visa, or we want right to work. We compare it with the person. This is like the first defense. Number two, before sending the contract, we do the home office check as well, and we save the report. We get a proper, it's actually very proper report. Otherwise, we report it. If it's about the guest, we do report it to the police immediately. First, the person, I mean, the duty manager will take this call. So if that's proving, immediately we call the police, and we handle the whole evidence. If we are not very sure, we just don't allow the check-in. We just don't allow we don't entertain the situation at all, and we report it after. If we think there is also risk, because you have to also here to be wise, you don't want this to escalate and anyone to get hurt in between. When is employee, we tell the employee itself that we find out that you look like you don't have the right to work, please contact several. But by law, and maybe my colleague Vandana and Meenal can confirm that, with the case I told you, when I did the research, we are obliged to report it, and we did. So there is a link where we reported who was she, what happened, and a copy of all the passport, and you have to report it online. It's actually mandatory.
I want to follow up with a question to Meenal here about the importance of collaborating with other businesses. I know you were banging that drum earlier, Meenal, but it perhaps stresses how important it is to look at external companies, organizations, charities, lawyers, you name it. But, you know, how can boutique hotels efficiently and effectively collaborate with other businesses in order to combat this better?
So yeah, so it's to my earlier point, but it's a really, really important point, as you say. Communication and collaboration are, to me, like the sort of cornerstones of the success we've had when it came to tackling modern slavery within the hotel group. I think, as I said before, firstly, working with organizations, we work with Stop the Traffic to simply audit the supply chains, audit our supply chains, which took months and months and months. And the findings were just really interesting. But then looking at the sort of the high risk areas, we sort of went in there first and looked at the partners we would have to speak to within those high risk areas. So that started the conversation, which, you know, took a while. Questions such as, you know, are you aware that modern slavery may exist? Do you have a modern slavery statement? Are you aware of your own labor practices? Are you interested in tackling this issue if you are aware of it? So those conversations became really critical. Thereafter, though, these conversations have become much easier than they were before. What we've now got as part of our blueprint is both for labor as well as product supply chains, we have a very staged step-by-step approach, which we take across the board, which is sort of step one is identify the organizations within supply chain. Step two is identify the risks, which can be analyzed according to various criteria, such as country, commodity, and characteristics of the industry. Then step three is prioritizing engagement. So considering sort of resource and access constraints that we're dealing with and acknowledging these challenges with hotel managers and procurement teams. So what falls within high risk, what isn't high risk, what constitutes sort of a substantial portion of procurement. Then step four is engaging with the suppliers to establish sort of basic expectations and sort of in order to also understand the ability of that business to manage its workforce legally and ethically. So there's that engagement that comes at the step four. Step five, hotels are encouraged to implement appropriate management processes with each of their suppliers. So now we have these really formal relationships with our suppliers where we collectively monitor the standards that we agreed we would stick to and we would comply to. So there'd be formal review. So we have within our own hotel operations, we have an ATC, which is the Anti-Trafficking Committee. And then that Anti-Trafficking Committee then has their satellite sort of meetings, formal reviews, regular compliance of tracking of the suppliers' policies, spot checks on staff working in the hotel, as Basel said earlier, with the police as well, making sure that you're working with the police really closely is really important and vital, and spot checks by a third-party agency, whether it's police or somebody else. And ultimately, the aim here is not to terminate any relationships, but to actually make sure that we are on a supportive journey with our suppliers, to be acting legally, ethically, and making sure that we're working to tackle this issue together. So there's a sort of communication side, there's a collaboration side, there's a compliance side, and there's sort of setting the standards. But I think that as more and more people start doing this, which they are, it becomes much easier to have these conversations and much easier to collaborate. And in fact, there's sort of no reason not to collaborate because of the nature of the business is so multi-layered, multifaceted, and there's so many risks within it that actually this is the only way to manage it.
I have a final question that I would like to ask all of you. I can see that we've got 4 minutes on the clock until our allotted hour. So this will be a sort of short but sweet summary, I suppose. And I'll start with Meenal, then I'll go to Vandana, then I'll end with Basel. So Meenal, what are the long-term benefits for hoteliers who do prioritize that responsible and ethical practice within their business?
So I'm just going to talk to two. One is that it's best to get ahead of the curve. This guidance and everything's about to come out. There's going to be more requirements of businesses. So actually making sure that we're ready for that when it happens is just good practice. We should be doing it anyway. Secondly, as a guest-facing business, the public are becoming more and more aware and interested in the sort of social and ethical practices of businesses that they're engaging with. And actually, when it comes to spending their money, they want to see what they're spending it on and how aware these businesses are of their just moral responsibilities. So I think that it's a moral obligation on the business. It's also important that your guests understand what they're buying and what they're paying for, and that you're being responsible. And it's going to become a legal requirement anyway, so it's better to be prepared.
Thanks, Meenal. Vandana, what do you think?
I think, again, I'm really echoing what Meenal said as well, but it's about putting your stance, making it very clear what your stance is on modern slavery and what you're doing to combat it. Also making you more attractive for other organisations to work with you, especially the larger organisations, and also disassociating yourself from any taint of slavery in the sector. And overall, I guess it's more about reputation, making sure that you perceive the hotel's image in a good light, and I think all that helps, and it isn't hugely difficult to implement.
Thank you. And Basel, what are your thoughts?
If I can just add to Vandana and Meenal is a good it will help you if we follow all what we just discussed today correctly. We really provide a very good well-being for our employee. Our employee will understand we are working hard to maintain the work environments, that we are all here coming with the correct right to work, with the correct documentations. You don't want also to work in a part of the team you don't know who is dodgy, who is not. This is very important as well from a safety perspective. Also, I will say, in general, is supporting a very good cause in supporting the governments and other charity organizations towards safety, and fighting the modern slavery in all shape, in all scenarios, not only when coming to hospitality. I mean, you are don't think what we are doing is when you are checking someone ID or you are looking at these things, it's a big thing, and they guests also, your guests, your customers, like Vandana say, your business partner will appreciate it as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you all of you for your
Thank you.
insights shared today. I just have a couple of slides that I want to run through before we close off, and right at the end we will leave this webinar open for an extra 2 minutes, just to allow any of our audience members to follow up on any of the links that we have popped into the chat today. So just a couple of slides to end with today. I'm actually going to be hosting the Service Department Awards this Thursday, celebrating the global service department, apart hotel and extended stay industry. It's a black tie ceremony. We're very excited, and tickets are still on sale. We have limited availability and we would love to see you there. So please head over to the website and you can purchase your tickets, and we will look forward to celebrating with you on the evening. And if you're interested in working with us, either across our digital webinars such as this one or our in-person events, do get in touch with my colleague Piers. His details are up on your screen now. And something that we would really appreciate from all of you, a colleague of mine is running a survey all about the impact of AI in marketing. If you do have some 5 minutes to spare, we would really appreciate any of your thoughts to take the survey. This will form part of her final thesis at university, so any help would be greatly appreciated. The link has been popped into the chat. And all that's left for me to do now is to say thank you. Thank you all those for attending. Thank you to Vandana, Meenal and Basel for your contributions. Really appreciate that it's a very important but very sensitive topic. I think we've covered as much as we possibly can within the hour. So hope you've learned something. I've enjoyed chatting with you all today, and I look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Thanks and take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Hello, we are International Hospitality Media, or IHM for short. IHM is the #1 brand to engage with decision makers in hospitality and real estate. Our 4 multimedia brands lead their respective sectors with breaking news, comments, trends and opinion across a variety of multimedia solutions. We provide an inspirational community to connect people through world-class events, webinars, podcasts, award schemes and much more. But let us share our story of who we are and what we do. Over 10 years ago, Piers and George had a light bulb moment to provide expert opinion, comments and low-cost digital content. And so they went on a journey over the past decade, creating media platforms to serve the hospitality and real estate industries. We now have an engaged audience with a reach of over 60,000 monthly visitors across our website, 48,000 of our email database across all the sectors, and over 67,000 across our social channels. Everything we do believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. We make things simple and very easy to work with us. And we're a friendly bunch too. We offer creative solutions to help you achieve your business goals. Read, watch, listen, meet with IHM. Contact us for a chat today. Just look at some of the brands we have worked with recently.